Hello there! My name is William Shakespeare, and I'd like to thank you for choosing to visit Western Connecticut State University's production of my play, A Midsummer Night's Dream. This is one of my most well-known plays, and one of my favorites, although when you write 37, it can be like picking a favorite child, although that's easy for me. It would be my poor son, Hamnet. You may be asking, now, Mr. Shakespeare, where did your accent go and why are you speaking in perfect American English? To that I say, don't worry, enjoy the informational video. Anyway, you may have heard my name before, especially if you sat through a high school English class, but how much do you really know? I'd like to take you on a brief journey through my life to help enrich your viewing experience. I should be very clear that this is by no means a detailed, in-depth history of my entire life. Neither you nor I have the time for that. There's books out there. Instead, consider this a plethora of fun facts intended to help contextualize what you are about to see.
I was born in a town called Stratford-upon-Avon, approximately 90 miles away from London. Historical records aren't quite sure when I was born, and frankly, I'll never tell, but we do know that I was baptized on the 26th of April in 1594. Attendance records have been lost, but my family was wealthy for the area, so it's believed I studied first at King's New School as a child, where I would have been educated in Latin and grammar, perhaps a glimpse into my future career as a dramatist and poet. And when I was just 18, I married the 26-year-old Anne Hathaway, fresh off of starring in Rachel Getting Married. That was a joke. I married a different woman with the same name, but what a coincidence. We had our first child, Susanna, 6 months later, and I'll let you do the math on that. In 1585, I would have twins, including my son, Hamnet, who tragically passed at the age of 11. The next 7 years have been lost to time, but at some point I moved to London, joining the growing theatre scene there. By 1592, I had even received my first public diss, when playwright Robert Greene wrote, "There is an upstart crow beautified with our feathers, that with his tiger's heart wrapped in a player's hide, supposes he is as well able to bombast out a blank verse as the best of you." I wasn't college educated like most writers of the day were, so I caught a fair amount of flack for it. When I began writing, everyone loved a historical drama, so my first plays were likely Richard III and Henry IV, as I didn't really care that much about the 5 kings that came before then. These guys had much better stories. In the beginning, my works were performed at the theater, a very original name, but in 1599 we began performing at the Globe, which would become synonymous with my work. I wrote 37 plays over the course of around 15 years, many of which remain in the larger cultural echelon. We are unsure if I ever fully retired, but around 1610 my productivity steeply declined, and the historical record of me became scarce. I passed on April 23, 1616, at the tender age of 52. No official cause of death is known, but there's a fairly good chance I caught a fever after a pretty intense drinking night with the boys, Ben Johnson and Michael Drayton. I was buried in Trinity Church with a message about not moving my bones, which remain there to this day.
One of the reasons people are drawn to my work is that I wrote all sorts of plays. People have classified them in many different ways, but the simplest is historical, comedy, tragedy. Now, there are many subgenres within these, such as the problem play, but I was told to keep this video short, so we won't delve into that too much here.
I began with historical plays that retell events from world history, most often English kings. I wrote about 11 of these, depending on how much of Edward III you believe I wrote. 64% of my history plays were about dudes named Henry, believe it or not. There's been a lot of those throughout history. These tended to present somewhat fictional versions of truth, and I heavily utilized the Tudor, York, and Lancaster legacies.
Hey, it is still a play after all. The groundlings would have been quite upset if it wasn't at least a little bit entertaining. My comedies are quite well received.
Some of the most well-known ones include As You Like It, Much Ado About Nothing, and the one you're about to see, A Midsummer's Night Dream. My comedies were not laugh-out-loud funny entirely, and I also explored deeper themes, but in general, they all had some wacky characters and a happy ending. Some comedies are referred to as the problem plays, including The Winter's Tale and All's Well That Ends Well. These shift rapidly between comic moments and much more tragic moments. A little bit of tone blending for the real fans, gotta keep it interesting. I might be best known for my tragedies, which include Hamlet, Lion King Ripped Me Off and I Am Yet to Receive Any Royalties, King Lear, and the one, the only, Romeo and Juliet. Isn't Leonardo DiCaprio just dreamy?
As you may have guessed, I was pretty obsessed with royalty, just more interesting to me than the commoners. No disrespect to the commoners, of course. Please don't throw food at me.
Most of these tragedies were written after the death of Queen Elizabeth I, and the entire country was basically depressed, so I figured I'd give the people what they wanted to see. My tragedies are dark, and death and chaos run amok in them.
Hey Shakespeare, why don't you throw us some fun facts?
What? You guys want to hear fun facts? I wrote 37 plays. Is that not enough for you? My father made gloves for a living. I used to wear a gold hoop earring. When I died, I left my wife my second best bed and barely mentioned her in the will. That last one got pretty dark. It's probably enough for now.
Okay, now get this. Some people don't even think I wrote my own plays. Okay, sure, my writing is way better than most with my education level. Sure, my surviving handwriting is chicken scratch. Sure, people didn't really mourn when I died, but come on, give me my credit and cut me my check. Francis Bacon, Edward de Vere, while they were great writers, they didn't write my work. They were just richer and more educated than I was. Some people even think my buddy Marlowe did it, but I can assure you, it was all me.
Well, that feels like enough information for the first video. If you like this, make sure to smash that like button and watch the second one. Shakespeare, out.